Good afternoon. Before I begin, I've been advised by my team that I should provide assurance to those who are taking photographs that I am the genuine Alden McLaughlin and not a professional impersonator. So I brought my Cayman Islands passport. Albert Einstein used to like to make the point that an empty stomach is not a good political advisor. So let me therefore assure you that I have enjoyed my lunch, and I trust that you have done likewise. I can scarcely believe that it's a year since we last gathered here. It is one of those curious situations where at the same time it seems like yesterday, but also like a very long time ago. I suspect that an intense focus on the affairs of state may be to blame for this, because your government has worked very hard every day since being returned to office to restore stability to the country and to the economy. Our economic policies are working, and the economic indices are pointing to encouraging growth. The Cayman Islands Semi-Annual Economic Report 2014 shows that overall economic activity in the Cayman Islands grew by an estimated 2.2% in the first 6 months of this year. In the first quarter, GDP grew by 1.5%, while second quarter growth is estimated at 3.3%. The growth rates are the strongest estimated so far for the country since the post-2008 global financial crisis period. The growth achieved so far this year is also higher than the official annual forecast for the country in 2014, which is 1.9%. Greater economic growth occurred in several sectors, including wholesale and retail trade, hotels and restaurants, transport, storage and communication, real estate, renting and business activities, and construction. With respect to the first quarter of the current fiscal year, that is 1st July to 30th September, I can announce the following results. Government's operating revenues earned for the quarter were $117.6 million, which is $2.5 million greater than that budgeted. The government incurred operating expenditures, the largest component of which is personnel costs, of $119.1 million during the first quarter, and these were $5.5 million less than budgeted. Financing costs, which represent interest expenses on government's public debt, amounted to $7.2 million. This is in line with budget expectations because the government did not engage in any new borrowings, and the interest rates on our existing debt portfolio are fixed. For the current fiscal year that will end on the 30th of June 2015, the projected operating surplus for central government is $120.9 million. So, President Johan, we're doing a little better than the 50 or 60 million budget surpluses of the mid-2000s. Statutory authorities and government-owned companies are an integral part of the public sector, and they have the same fiscal year as that of central government. In the first quarter of the current fiscal year, the SAGCs collectively experienced an operating surplus of $1.7 million, $1 million better than projections. The entire public sector will not undertake any long-term borrowing during the current fiscal year. Central government will reduce its debt during the current fiscal year by repaying $25.4 million of principal by the 30th of June next year. Before this administration took office, it was not uncommon for annual overdraft interest cost to be $750,000. In the government's first year in office, we were able to reduce that figure to $66,000, and this year, overdraft interest will be zero. On the 30th of September this year, the government's operating bank account balances totaled $67.1 million, and the government is confident that these balances will remain positive throughout the entire fiscal year. As I've said before, confidence is the currency of investment, And in this regard, I am proud to tell you that as a government and a country, we are fortunate to have the skill and zeal of a Minister of Finance like the Honorable Marco Archer in charge of purse strings. He's not here today because he is at a World Bank IMF meeting in Washington, but today is also his birthday. He shares his birthday with Her Excellency. While we are being good stewards of the country's finances, we are fighting hard against the phenomenon of jobless growth, particularly as it relates to Caymanians. I believe our strategy to increase employment is well known, but at the risk of repetition, I will restate it here. The government has developed a multi-pronged approach to grow jobs because there is no simple or single solution. As you would have seen recently, a director has been hired for the National Workforce Development Agency to enhance economic and educational opportunities for Caymanians. He will work with government, businesses, and educational sectors to ensure that the NWDA meets the needs of both job seekers and employers. From the 1st of July last year to the 30th of September this year, the NWDA has directly found employment for 179 persons, and 1,003 companies have registered online with the employment agency. I can also tell you that work permits fell relative to the same period a year ago at June 30th by 2.2% to 20,166. Other areas in which the NWDA is helping Caymanians find jobs is an intake and assessment process that includes the identification of barriers to employment and an appraisal of skills, interests, and abilities of job seekers. Working with the Department of Immigration to increase transparency in the work permit process and provide an efficient way for employers to communicate their efforts to hire Caymanians. And community outreach days to help people look for jobs in their own communities. Government also plans this year to publish for consultation a draft bill to make various amendments to the labor law. These, in a nutshell, are the practical measures that form one prong of the attack on joblessness. Our economic strategy and most recent concessions aimed at reducing the cost of doing business are designed to spur economic activity. And I should caution that while it might be tempting for some of you to take the savings in duties and licenses fees straight to the bottom line for increased profits, this approach would be short-sighted and will ultimately be bad for business. It is important that business plays its part by passing on the savings to its customers to generate more business and ultimately provide more opportunities for employment. You may well say that this is not your core function, but I think we both know that unemployed people cannot support your businesses. So I agree with President Moxham that there must be balance and partnership with government if the country is to benefit and progress. As a government, we have invested millions of dollars by cutting revenue to reduce the cost of doing business. We appreciate that this is a big issue for business, and thus we have reduced import duty to licensed traders by 2 percentage points to 20% at a cost of $4 million to government revenue, reduced the duty on building materials to 15% from as high as 22% for some items, removed the import duty on critical ingredients for local bakeries, amended the customs tariffs to give a duty rate of 10% to electric motorcycles and electric segways, the same rate for electric cars, and a 15% duty on hybrid motorcycles, the same for hybrid cars. We've implemented a series of changes to trade and business license fees as an incentive to support the creation and development of new businesses. Businesses with 10 or fewer employees are being permitted to pay their annual fees in quarterly installments instead of the typical one-time full payment. And come the 1st of January next year, government will reduce the import duty charged on diesel brought in by CUC for the generation of electricity from 75 cents per imperial gallon to 50 cents. While we are looking after business here at home, we sometimes find ourselves drawn to matters on the global stage. We have had yet again to defend the reputation of the Cayman Islands financial services industry overseas. Many of you know that the Cayman Islands recently found itself on a list of high-risk countries produced by the Financial Conduct Authority in London. We knew when we saw the list that they had made a mistake. Through a series of diplomatic exchanges, we learned that the list was indeed incorrect. It has now been removed, and the FCA has committed to a full review. I assure you, this administration will do everything in its power to ensure our good reputation is safeguarded and our positive story is told. In this regard, I wish to specifically single out the Minister for Financial Services, the Honourable Wayne Panton, and his ministry team led by Dr. Dax Pasteo for being decisive, focused, and unflinching in standing up for the Cayman Islands during these past few months. You don't always have to pound your chest or sing your own praises to get your point across, and Minister Panton demonstrated this at the highest professional level. I look forward to next Tuesday when we launch the Anti-Money Laundering and Combating Financing of Terrorism National Risk Assessment for the Cayman Islands. The significance of the National Risk Assessment is that the Financial Task Force has now promulgated 40 recommendations against which each country's anti-money laundering framework will be benchmarked. The Cayman Islands is due for a fourth round mutual evaluation in early 2017, and it is critical that we undertake a rigorous national risk assessment as well as assess our regulatory and supervisory framework to be able to demonstrate their effectiveness. I will have more to say about this initiative when I speak at the launch of the National Risk Assessment next week. Marketing the Cayman Islands as a great place to do business continues to be a key focus of this administration. I am pleased to announce today that as a result of my attendance at the Internet Marketing Association's Impact 14 conference in Las Vegas last month at the invitation of Cayman Enterprise City, the Internet Marketing Association has decided to host an important event in Cayman next April. This event is a first for the jurisdiction and will bring IMA board members and some of the world's top technology thought leaders to Cayman for a series of meetings, tours of the CEC zone, and industry networking events. In addition, the IMA will be establishing a small presence within CEC for its international business operations that will help promote the Cayman Islands and CEC. This is good news for Cayman and Enterprise City, and a good example of how partnering with the private sector can have positive, tangible results. I look forward to more interactions of this nature across all industries. The trip and its outcomes are just another way to build up confidence and reputation, both of which are critical to inward investment. And there is more good news with respect to CEC. I am pleased to announce that the company has acquired a 50-acre site that will become the permanent home for the CEC campus on the outskirts of Georgetown, just 5 minutes from the airport. And government is working with them on completing an already gazetted access road, which is on Crown land. More exciting announcements about the start of construction of the campus will be forthcoming. As part of our efforts to make the Cayman Islands more business-friendly, we are also making some further changes to immigration policy. Cabinet has just approved an amendment to the immigration regulations that will allow those traveling to the islands for business to remain in the country for up to 10 days without the need for a work permit. Also, we will shortly introduce a pilot program offering VIP concierge services for business people to be fast-tracked through immigration and customs when they come into and leave the country. It will be pay for play, if you will. Another immigration policy directive just approved by Cabinet will give long-term visitors who own homes in Cayman the opportunity to receive permission to stay in the country up to 6 months without requiring them to make repeat trips to immigration for extension on a month-to-month basis, as is now usually the case. I am happy to say that economic activity is on the upswing, and there are a number of new investments in the works, which we know will provide jobs once they come on stream. Hopefully by year-end, we will see work begun on the 10-mile east-west arterial linking Hurst Road in Savannah to Frank Sound Road in Northside. The road is crucial to Ironwood development, a residential golfing community that has the endorsement of golf legend Arnold Palmer, who will design the course. Projects like this are good for the Cayman Islands because it is not a one-off quick development that offers only a small window of jobs for Caymanians. Instead, it is anticipated that it will take 20 years for Ironwood to be completed, which would mean a steady need for Caymanian workers to help in construction and in the commercial ventures that eventually open. It is envisioned that Ironwood will ultimately spread across 600 acres and include a hotel, conference center, sports village, and homes for around 2,000 people. The east-west arterial will also draw development along the new roadway, which again will help create jobs for Caymanians, as will the new hotel planned for Health City, which is scheduled to start next year, early next year. DART is making headway on its boutique hotel, which will be managed by the upscale Kimpton chain. Once the hotel is completed and opened in November 2016, it is anticipated that the $309 million project will generate 400 jobs and add another layer to the options available in Cayman's high-end tourism product. An additional hotel is planned for Camana Bay between Royal Palms and the West Indian Club that, when finished, will provide additional rooms and residences. It will be a 10 to 15-year development, meaning a steady arena for jobs. The build-out of Camana Bay is proceeding well with Forum Lane, an 85,000 square foot commercial and residential complex. DART's other project, the $7 million refurbishment of the Cayman Islands Yacht Club, is done, making space for additional vessels at new state-of-the-art docks, which gives us yet another tourism draw. And I'm happy to say that government's negotiations with DART to amend the terms of the NRA agreement are continuing and appear to be heading in the right direction. This has been a long and controversial affair, and I probably should say no more about it at this stage, lest I jinx the negotiations. The old Hyatt hotel site is also being revived. Plans have been submitted to create a new 224-room resort and conference center. The Central Planning Authority has also received separate plans to add 2 new stories and additional penthouse suites. If approved, the resort could open in 2017. Johan, this was your water. Government has also been working with a Caymanian developer to help him realize his dream of developing the Grand Palazzo, a waterfront condominium complex on the north sound side of West Bay. Construction of the high-end development will create 250 jobs during the 5-year build-out. And in Bordentown, zoning changes have been made from low-density residential to hotel tourism to help move along a planned hotel development in Beach Bay. This will go a long way to create employment opportunities in that district, as well as increase available room stock for stayover visitors. A knock-on benefit will be the construction of a stretch of Seaside Road, linking Beach Bay Road with Mance Road. Construction of the road will mean added opportunities for Bordentown entrepreneurs. To complement these investments and provide employment opportunities within the hospitality industry, the long-awaited internationally accredited Cayman Islands School of Hospitality opened last month. 25 young Caymanians have embarked on the necessary training and skills to not only take up frontline positions in the hospitality sector, but to prepare them to become qualified professionals with a clear path for employment and advancement within the tourism sector. I am pleased to announce that because we have had such tremendous growth in the tourism industry and such interest in the program, we have plans to double the number of students to 50 next year. The Hospitality Schools program aligns with our country's current and future human capital development needs and has been designed to increase the number of Caymanians employed in the hospitality sector. The school's curriculum was jointly developed through public and private sector collaboration, and certification is internationally accredited. The school's success will ultimately be measured by the achievements of its graduates and how well they integrate into the workforce. I am optimistic that At the culmination of the course, the newly qualified participants will be well received by the growing industry that helped to train them. When compared to 2013, total visitor arrivals for the first 6 months of 2014 surged by 8.8%, with 1,072,008 compared to 985,387. This performance is associated with a rebound of 8.6% in cruise arrivals, 861,517 in the first 6 months of 2014, compared to 792,976 in 2013. While air arrivals remain on the uptrend with growth of 9.4%, or 210,491 in 2014, compared to the first 6 months of 2013 with 192,411. And the growth of the tourism industry has served as a catalyst for expansion, particularly in the areas that directly interact with visitors. Earlier this year, the Public Transport Board approved the granting of 34 taxi and 13 tour operators. All Caymanians, I might add, contrary to what you might hear on the Mall Road, to service the industry's growing needs. With yet more projected growth projected in cruise and stayover arrivals, an additional 6 taxi permits are to be considered by the Public Transportation Board, bringing the total number of new taxi permits granted in 2014 to 40. I trust that by now you have discerned our clear strategy connecting economic activity to employment opportunities. And so at this point, I must ask you, as members of the Chamber, how you see your role. Just last month, we remembered the 10th anniversary of the devastation of Hurricane Ivan. I mention the hurricane because many of us in this room felt its blows on a personal, business, or financial level. I recall that now Councillor Joey Hugh was president of the Chamber when Hurricane Ivan struck. It was under his leadership that the Chamber worked hand in hand with the government and various organizations to help Grand Cayman recover. It is with that spirit of cooperation between government and the Chamber that we can keep the Cayman Islands on a steady course. I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you today to update you on our achievements and also to raise with you a number of troubling issues relating to employment. And President Moxham alluded to some of them. I spoke before of the phenomenon of jobless growth, particularly as it relates to Caymanians. But the employment issues in Cayman have to do with more than just the economic conditions of recent times. As anyone who pays attention to what is happening in Cayman will be aware, there is a growing feeling of dissatisfaction, even resentment in some cases, among many Caymanians about their treatment in the labor market. The age-old concerns about whether qualified and able Caymanians are being given proper preference for jobs and fair treatment in the workplace have increased. And government is becoming more and more concerned at what appears to be a trend among some companies of declaring jobs held by Caymanians as redundant, then retitling them and applying for work permits. The complaints about unfair treatment in the workplace, calls for a greater voice for workers, and the demands for a minimum or living wage continue to strengthen. An unhappy local workforce must be a concern not just to the government, but to the Chamber as well. The government cannot address these issues alone. As I mentioned earlier, we are proposing certain amendments to the labor law, and the Chamber is part of the committee looking at minimum wage. But the fundamental issue of the treatment of the Caymanian worker in the Cayman job market needs more than legislative change. It requires a change in attitude. The Chamber's pendulum continues to swing in favor of business, and rightly so. But the Chamber's leadership has an obligation, a duty, to demand a certain standard of ethics and fair play from its membership. The hiring of capable and willing Caymanians and the paying of a good and fair wage should not be a matter for debate. For our part, we will do our utmost to provide an environment where business can flourish, and I believe we have, in the year and a half, or a little less, since we took office, demonstrated this to be the case. Of course, government realizes that all the work done to create jobs, grow the economy, and attract investment will be for naught if we don't pay attention to the issue of crime. The presence of gangs within Cayman has created a social problem, and at its worst in 2011, saw gun crime as a weekly occurrence. The action of the Royal Cayman Islands Police Service, under the leadership of Commissioner Baines, and supported by government, has enabled a focused effort to not only stem that violence, but to prevent further violence by targeting and arresting those most involved. The arrest and conviction of some 6 major players was made possible by amended legislation that permits better witness protection and anonymity for witnesses who had previously been too frightened to give evidence in open court. The conviction of those 6 key gang members removed the persons who would take a feud and escalate it to an assassination. We still have others to deal with, but we are better able with updated laws to target, arrest, and successfully prosecute offenders. While serious crime is showing a drop of 5.6% this year, volume crime is showing increases, particularly in theft and damage offenses, up as much as 40%. Government will shortly introduce a second-hand dealers bill to the Legislative Assembly to help address the spike in property crimes. The new law will place additional controls on what has been a too obvious point of disposal in the Cayman Islands: cash for gold and pawn shop establishments. Our new customs management team has already proven effective with increased confiscation of contraband coming through our borders, including at Owen Roberts International Airport. We have a new inspection process for shipping containers leaving the islands, whereby persons shipping goods must have their packages inspected at the port by customs officers. Just this past July, enforcement officers seized 6 shipping containers during a series of raids and stopped the shipment of stolen property that had been taken in break-ins. The new procedure does not apply to major traders and customs brokers, but to those individuals who export personal goods using shipping agencies. Government is also tracking certain types of vessels taking goods off Cayman shores by way of the sea, again to tackle crime and the criminal element. Through government's crime reduction strategy, we are supporting an outreach program in which police, prison officers, counselors, and other subject area experts address students in schools under lockdown conditions where freedom is temporarily restricted. In addition, performance targets have been developed to define success in addressing recidivism, which is a huge problem in Cayman. I was interested to hear President McLaughlin say on radio a few weeks ago that crime is a national problem. It can't be fixed by government alone, the chamber, or the police. And he's right. A national problem such as crime needs a national fix, again with everyone at the table. The chamber has demanded that prisoners in Northwood be rehabilitated. I'm here to tell you that they have been and are being rehabilitated. But unless the businesses represented by those of you in this room are willing to hire those who have been successfully rehabilitated, all the policies, work, and efforts of government and Her Majesty's Prison Service are for naught. This point is especially important given the increasing clamor for government to get out of the business of social employment. While I agree that more needs to be done with the rehabilitation of prisoners, we must all join together to make the efforts successful. What we must do, as I said earlier, is work together and keep the lines of communication open. If the Chamber has an issue with the government, please let us hear it firsthand. Appearing in the media and making statements about issues without all the facts doesn't augur well for the Chamber, the government, the country, or the partnership we are trying to build. Before I move on to talk about government's proposed infrastructural projects, I should raise the issue of the state of the construction industry. Although there are a number of construction projects on the way, developments are still not near pre-2008 levels. In the aftermath of Hurricane Ivan, there was a proliferation of construction companies formed, many by persons who knew little or nothing about building. This was and is still possible because all that is required to become a building contractor in Cayman is a trade and business license. One of the consequences of this is that there are now a multitude of construction companies, many of which hold work permits. Some operate without paying pension, health insurance, or other benefits, and thus are able to underbid companies that comply with the statutory requirements. Others don't operate at all, but simply farm out their work permit holders. The result is that at the end of last month, there were 2,091 work permits held for construction workers at a time when a significant number of Caymanian tradesmen and laborers are unemployed. Contrary to common belief, the vast majority of these permits are not held by the 4 large construction companies, but by the smaller operators. In addition, we have fielded a number of concerns from the public on the quality of workmanship by contractors, or of consumers being left with the responsibility of incomplete or poor quality projects. This is in part because many contractors don't practice within their expertise. Often their inexperience with project and construction management leads to a mismanaged job and a consumer that is out of pocket. So following consultation with the various builders and contractor groups, government is pressing forward with amendments to the Builders' Law, which was passed in 2007 but never brought into effect. The law will require builders to demonstrate their ability and to be licensed within their specific area of expertise. It is expected that this law will reduce the number of unqualified contractors in the market and the abuse of work permits, thus creating more opportunities for Caymanians and businesses, and legitimate businesses. To help us continue to grow the economy and meet our fiscal responsibilities, government has identified 5 projects as a matter of priority to maintain and upgrade our country's physical infrastructure. The Georgetown Cruise Ship Berthing Facility, the Owen Roberts International Airport Terminal upgrades, the revitalization of Georgetown, the extension of the East-West Arterial Road, and a new solid waste management facility. All of these projects will be done with our commitment to follow best practice procurement processes. The details of the berthing facility are already well known, so I will not bore you by repeating them here. Similarly, work is already underway at the Owen Roberts International Airport. We have undertaken interim measures to help with overcrowding, including a new roof, providing shade and weather protection for waiting passengers, upgrades to the air conditioning system, and an extension of the departure lounge to provide additional seating. The major redevelopment work will begin in the first half of next year. The expansion project includes more than doubling the size of the airport terminal, repaving and strengthening the tarmac and runway, and in the longer term, putting in a taxiway parallel to the runway. When the Owen Roberts Airport opened in 1953, I don't think our forefathers could possibly have envisioned the high number of visitors who would come to our shores. In 2014, we are already experiencing a 10% increase in arrivals over last year, 249,684 compared to 226,291 in the same time frame last year. While it's a nice problem to have, the time it takes to process those returning home and visitors has become cumbersome. Government has had to boost the budget for the Department of Immigration to pay overtime to put more immigration officers on the front lines to process arrivals in a more timely fashion. As we make improvements to our airports for our residents and tourists alike, we're also aware that downtown Georgetown is in great need of its own makeover. I commend the downtown business owners that are putting in a seaside boardwalk without, I might add, government funding. We will take legislation to the House shortly to amend the development and planning law to ensure that downtown Georgetown is developed with a modern Caymanian feel throughout. We want property owners to be able to refit some of the downtown buildings for apartments and make Georgetown more pedestrian friendly with wider sidewalks, trees, and benches. It is our vision for Georgetown to be restored as an economic hub, including residential, recreational, retail, and commercial use. Roadworks have already been approved for a new connector, for a set of new connector roads to move traffic around downtown in a timelier and safer manner. New connector roads will run from Elgin Avenue to Eastern Avenue, from Elgin Avenue to Smith Road, from the Godfrey Nixon Way extension to North Church Street, and the extension of 4th Street going north. Also planned are improvements to Smith Road, Godfrey Nixon Way, and Edward and 4th Streets downtown. Work will be done in phases, creating new jobs, allowing companies to get contracts, and new businesses will be encouraged to start to move to the central business district. One of the challenges of successive governments, as President Moxham alluded to, has been the Georgetown landfill. While we are going through the proper, transparent, and accountable procedures for a long-term solution to solid waste, we are managing the existing site as best we can. Government is buying new equipment as needed, management has been improved, and we are seeing the benefits. We've also hired a senior project manager for the integrated solid waste management system who started work this past Monday. He brings over 25 years of waste management project experience and will be a welcome addition to the government team. The integrated solid waste management system procurement process continues in line with the provisions of the Framework for Fiscal Responsibility, with the Central Tenders Committee approval to award the first consultancy of the project being given at the end of last month. The Ministry is in negotiations with the successful tenderer, and an announcement will be made as soon as the contract negotiations have been completed. The outline business case will commence early in the second quarter of next year, and once approved, we will move to procurement of the preferred project in the first quarter of 2016. Let me say that my trip to Tampa to visit waste management facilities gave me a much clearer understanding of just what Cayman is facing in terms of waste management. We are taking a holistic approach to the landfill issues in the Cayman Islands, instead of dissecting it into parts to fix only one thing at a time. And I know there is a great deal of impatience about the length of time it is taking, but a project of this nature, magnitude, and cost cannot be rushed. There are some other matters of immediate interest to the business community: daylight savings time and Sunday trading. Daylight savings time is one of those issues that has also been around a long time. I must commend the Chamber for its survey of members concerning the issue. Of the 113 respondents, 55.7% said they supported changing to daylight savings time. The Progressive-led administration is proposing a public consultation process on this matter because it is our judgment that both our financial and tourism sectors could benefit from a move to daylight savings time. There are many benefits, including elimination of confusion over travel times, putting our financial industry in sync with New York, and putting an end to early arrivals and departures of cruise ships. The other issue that has come to the fore in successive governments is that of Sunday trading. Again, I must thank the Chamber for conducting the Sunday trading survey, which showed that 64.4% of your respondents, the same 113, supported allowing all businesses the option of opening on Sunday. We have taken those results into account as part of the public consultation on this issue. I can announce today that the Progressive-led government has decided not to turn Sunday into a general trading day, but to regularize trading so that the retailers currently operating in violation of the law will be made legal. We will make modifications to the schedule of exemptions to the Sunday trading law to permit corner stores and the C-stores at gas stations to open lawfully on Sunday and sell their usual merchandise. We heard the misgivings from the business community, church leaders, and private residents who did not want a wholesale opening of Sunday sales. But we also realized that we must ensure that those who have been providing essential goods and services on Sundays are able to continue to do so, but now legally. Most, if not all of you, are aware of the EY rationalization report delivered to government last month. President Moxham addressed it. The report was commissioned because this administration understands that government expenditure cannot be permitted to continue to grow in the way it has over the past decade. We also believe that government must strive to provide the services it does in a more efficient and effective manner. We therefore wanted professional advice and guidance as we seek to contain government expenditure and improve service. The report provides 55 recommendations as to how the government's objectives can be achieved. They include sale of government assets, hiving off of various services that government currently provides, the amalgamation of various agencies within the government, and a number of other recommendations. But they are just that, recommendations. The decisions about what will be done are for the caucus and ultimately the cabinet. We believe the report is a useful tool, and we thank EY for their good work in its production. But the government is not going to adopt the report wholesale. Some recommendations will be accepted, some will be modified, and others will not be accepted. We are still carefully going through the review process and making decisions. We are pleased that several initiatives already started by government dovetail with some of the recommendations made in the EY report. This is an indication that with regard to those items, we are on the right track. Some of these include the airport renovation, the public-private partnership process for the cruise terminal, raising the retirement age of civil servants to 65, the development of an integrated solid waste management system, simplifying the budgetary and financial reporting systems, and work is also underway to identify, review, and evaluate options to establish a new governance model for education that seeks to increase parents, private sector, and community participation in public education, and to determine ways to improve the financial performance of the University College. So while we do agree on a significant number of these issues, there are others that we see different approaches as being more palatable. The government at this stage is not inclined to sell or lease the Water Authority as recommended. We have, however, decided to develop a request for proposal for private sector interests to tender for the construction of a national sewerage system rather than having the Water Authority continue down that road. And while the government has not rejected the concept of real estate investment trusts as recommended by EY, it is not inclined at this time to proceed with the sale of key government assets such as the government administration building. Instead of paying back a loan on an asset it owns, government would instead have to make lease payments, and we are not persuaded that this makes good commercial sense. The government has also decided not to sell Radio Cayman. Aside from the fact that it is a Cayman institution, Radio Cayman provides a key and trusted service to the Cayman community. Instead of being sold, Radio Cayman and other government media will be coordinated in order to serve government and the community more effectively. While we recognize the need to rationalize government services, before we make any moves toward privatization, amalgamation, or restructuring, this administration will have to be satisfied that any action cabinet takes will be in the best interest of the Caymanian people and not necessarily in the best interest of a particular sector. We acknowledge the concerns expressed by President Moxham about whether or not the implementation unit, which has been established, and is made up presently of only civil servants, will have the nerve to implement the Cabinet's recommendations. We have considered this carefully, and on behalf of the government, I would like this afternoon to invite the Chamber to nominate one member to serve on the steering committee, which will guide the implementation process. Together, in the true spirit of partnership, I believe we can make it happen. Before I close, I want to acknowledge the guidance and support of Her Excellency, Mrs. Helen Kilpatrick, and the hard work of all my colleagues in the caucus and the Cabinet, including the Deputy Governor, Attorney General, and the Cabinet Secretary and his team. It has not been easy, but I believe we have made great strides in the past 16 months. I also want to thank the men and women of the public service for their support of the government's initiatives. Despite the relentless negativity, I am here to say that by and large, the public service is made up of hardworking, dedicated, and able people who strive every day to serve the country well. They receive little by way of appreciation. Today, as Premier and one who works with them every day, I say thanks and salute the public service of the Cayman Islands. I trust Chamber members now have a greater appreciation of government's policy initiatives as they relate to employment and the role that the business community can play in continuing to grow the economy. I thank you for the Chamber's input during the past year, and I look forward to future endeavors. We will not always agree on every issue, but by keeping dialogue open and dealing with each other directly and honestly, we can work together to keep this great country of ours on course. I thank you once again, sincerely, for giving me an opportunity to update you on our work since last September. If time permits, and your chairman, your CEO and president permits, I am happy to take questions. Thank you.